Welcome back to everyone joining from around the world. It's been a fascinating 2 days, and so thank you for staying with us until the final day. I'm Philippa Leighton-Jones.
And I'm Willem Marx. Over the course of the last 3 days on this Spotlight stage, we've looked at business resilience, the future of cloud, the intersection of Hollywood and Silicon Valley, and a whole lot more. Now, as so many people are still in the process of returning to the workplace, Samsung is going to give us a glimpse of the office of the future.
We're delighted to welcome Samsung's VP of Product Marketing, Mark Kuroyes, and VP of Networks, Strategy, Business Development and Marketing, Alok Shah. They will be interviewed by our colleague in Hong Kong, the Trust's Executive Editor in APAC, Aisha Spears.
Thank you, Willem and Philippa. Hello from Hong Kong. Now, the future of work and the role of the office is top of mind for many of us. The pandemic has fast accelerated our dependence on technology to keep businesses and entire industries going. My guests today work at the forefront of the intersection between tech and the solutions it offers to businesses of all sizes. Mark and Alok, thank you both for joining us. Before we jump into our discussion, I'd like to encourage everyone here to make the most of these experts we're sharing time with, and pop any questions you may have in the chat box. We'll save some time at the end to go through them. Now, I'd like to kick things off with you, Alok. For years, there has been great fanfare about the arrival of 5G. Tell us what is quite so important about this particular generation of network, and why does 5G matter to business today?
Great, thanks for having me, Aisha. So every decade or so, there's a new generation of mobile technology. And each one brings a new set of capabilities that have transformed people's lives, right? So in 1G, it was about voice. 2G, the killer app was text messaging. 3G brought the start of data and real bandwidths. And then 4G was an entire innovation ecosystem centered around the smartphone, right? With video streaming and on-demand services. We think 5G brings another host of huge improvements. And we believe that the impact will be, to a large degree, actually in the enterprise because of the types of capabilities. Not only are we talking about substantially more speeds, an order of magnitude more performance from that perspective, but also very low latency, meaning the network will be more responsive than it has been in the past, and high device density, which will allow for new Internet of Things experiences. And so that combination, we think, really will transform what it means for various enterprise verticals.
And Mark, how do you see 5G play out in terms of display technology? What has the new network enabled there?
Well, I think as Alok mentioned, so displays are increasing in importance as we look at the future of how we communicate, how we share information, and there's a lot of data that has to be transported. 5G and its promise to, as Alok mentioned, deliver greater throughput and lower latency allows us to, one, put displays in places where we probably didn't before because of the hardwire connection that we were looking to put because of the cost. So there were a lot of barriers in the past, and a lot of those are being removed with the capabilities that 5G brings, and then allows for, again, the transmission of all of that information, that rich visual information, and really allows us to take the full advantage of all the display technologies that we've seen come into play: LED, mini LED, 8K, HDR, some of these capabilities that are really somewhat limited at some times based on the throughput and the latency. Now we don't have those limitations.
I'd like to dive into specific industries and understand really which sectors are set to be most impacted by 5G and display technology. I think it's impossible to have any business discussion at the moment without looking at the current state of the global supply chain. So we might as well start there. Alok, how do you see 5G impacting the manufacturing sector? What sort of innovation is possible to reduce the kind of disruption we're seeing today?
Yeah, manufacturing facilities are some of the highest tech locations on the planet, right? There are all kinds of ways where companies have invested in driving health and safety for workers, production efficiency, reduced downtime. You've got autonomous ground vehicles moving materials around the facility. You've got multi-million-dollar pieces of equipment that are kind of building up product. You've got robotic arms helping with that assembly process, and 5G we think really brings benefits both on the efficiency side and also on the downtime side. So video is becoming more and more important in these facilities, and being able to process that video. So putting cameras in more places, being able to bring that traffic all back and do analytics to make sure that efficiency is maximized, that workers have all of the tools that they need to be most successful. And then when it comes to downtime, these pieces of equipment are so unique and specialized that there are only a handful of folks that are capable of really doing maintenance on them, right? And so if a piece of equipment does go down, the cost and time associated with having someone fly in to support that is a real problem. If you can have an employee on site who gets training through augmented reality, perhaps to do some basic maintenance, and then has the ability to connect with an expert who might be somewhere else in the world to use AR basically to fix equipment, to do regular maintenance, to prevent downtime on an ongoing basis, that's a very, very powerful set of use cases. And going back to Mark's point earlier about display, there's a massive amount of data being generated in these facilities, right? It's not just video. There are sensors throughout the facility on every piece of equipment. You've got diagnostics that you want to capture on production efficiency in each of these lines. And all of that data has to be consumed and analyzed and visualized, right? And that's really where these advanced displays come in. And like Mark said, you can put them anywhere you want to in a facility now because you don't have to rely on a hardwired connection.
Right, you mentioned augmented reality and what 5G enables there. Mark, surely AR has applications far beyond the manufacturing sector. How do you see it impacting something such as retail?
Yeah, absolutely. Retail is one of those industries that was incredibly impacted recently, right, with the pandemic and the disruption that occurred. So as retail organizations have tried to re-engage customers, right, into physical locations, right, you've had the acceleration of online retail, given the restrictions that have been in place. Part of that is re-engaging the customers and providing unique customer buyer journeys and experiences. And to the point Alok mentioned, a lot of that is data. How do you deliver all of that data and deliver it in a unique way? And AR is just another example of creating a unique customer differentiated experience, right? So that it engages the customers as they come into the physical location, providing new use cases for them, and the displays allow you to engage those customers using things like AI, machine learning, to create those experiences that will entice customers to continue to come in, right, and want to experience those things firsthand. So I think there's a huge amount of opportunity to leverage the capabilities that I think Alok mentioned previously about the intersection of 5G and display at this point.
And I can add.
Sorry,
go ahead. I'm sorry, Aisha. I think retail, the retail use cases expand beyond what you can do just with AR as well, right? There's a big trend around buy online, pick up in store, right? Just being able to have connectivity throughout the facility and out to the curbside, to have alignment of inventory, to know where goods are. All of these things can be enabled by a better wireless and mobile connectivity.
Right, it's great to see how the marriage of 5G and display technology can benefit retailers from the warehouse to meeting these kind of new needs that customers have found predominantly through the pandemic and are likely to continue on. What other things are you seeing? You mentioned the buy online, pay in store. How about in terms of restaurants? How are people using display and 5G there?
Yeah, I mean, I could jump in quickly. We saw a huge increase in, of course, the use of drive-throughs, right, at quick service restaurants, and we had worked with many of the major brands over the last couple of years in enabling outdoor menu boards, right? So it was a perfect opportunity for them to leverage that capability, as many of their the restaurants had to be modified, right, as it related to the situation. And so we've seen more and more of that. In the past, again, that was a hardwired connection, right? So there was a lot of cost that went into building out the capabilities to put an outdoor menu board at trenches and so forth. 5G, and the reason they did that was they were concerned about the connectivity, because that menu board is their lifeblood to communicate pricing and dynamic offers and such. But now 5G lowers the barriers of entry and lowers the costs associated with that. So it just drives an enormous amount of potential for moving in that direction. That's just one use case. I don't know, look, if you have other thoughts on that.
Well, I think we've been talking very much about 5G and display, but what's interesting right now is there's sort of a confluence of new technologies, right? And one of those is around AI and machine learning, which Mark alluded to earlier in the retail use case. And if you're a quick serve restaurant and you have a much better understanding of the customer who's driving up, what sort of differentiated experiences can you provide to them so that they don't have to see the whole menu, right? Maybe you know something about their dietary preferences, or you know something about what they like to buy every morning, and you can really streamline that experience for them.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Let's switch gears a little bit, because the future of work, the role of the office is something being reconsidered everywhere at the moment. I mean, indeed, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing right now without massive advances in network capabilities. Mark, tell us what 5G means for hybrid and remote working. What does network innovation mean for how displays can continue to enable connection and collaboration between people?
Yeah, I always use the example that we would always burn about 15 minutes of any meeting time trying to connect. You always had that one or a couple of colleagues that may not have been on site in the physical office, and so we would burn up that time. I do think that flexibility is now table stakes as it relates to being able to attract talent and manage the workforce moving forward. And I think the intersection again of display technology as these windows into the connectivity are going to be key. So more displays in order to facilitate, and with more high resolution, more capabilities, more data requires more throughput, right? Lower latency, right? Back to the points that we were making. And 5G is a technology that gives us that promise, that ability, again, within the office to create that flexibility. One use case that we've seen more and more is there's this idea of the fear of missing out, right? You're not in the office and you're online, and you're not part of the actual spontaneous conversation or the drawing on the board. Now with interactive flat panel technology, you have the ability to have locations connected through those interactive digital whiteboards where you're annotating in one location and the other locations are seeing exactly what you're annotating. That's a lot of data, a lot of throughput is required, and again, 5G allows you to do something like that. I don't know, look at other thoughts.
Yeah, another area where we see value in 5G for home-based workers is actually around the issue that everyone has a different internet service provider, a different Wi-Fi network at home. And for the IT team at your company, that can get really tricky. And so we're finding that some companies want home-based workers or hybrid workers who are home sometimes to have a separate connection for their business work, one that can be consistent across all of the employees and more easily maintained. And one way to do that is a 5G connection, right? So you have, whatever broadband provider you have at home today, and then you have a separate 5G connection coming from the wireless provider that achieves some sort of performance threshold so that the IT team can be comfortable with the consistency of that connection. And then it's the same router for everyone. It's the same service provider for everyone. And so you can get a really great experience as a home-based worker, and the IT team behind you can deal with it with much less headache and hassle.
I think the experience of working from home is crucial to the discussion here. Look, in your mind, knowing what you know about what 5G enables, what does the workplace of the future offer us in terms of benefits? What does this mean in terms of inclusivity, productivity, and perhaps even the elusive idea of happiness?
Yeah, I think, I can tell you, I've been home for most of the last 18 months, and I love being around my family and seeing my dog every day and all these things. And so there is something to be said for having more of a hybrid work environment. And to Mark's point earlier, you don't want to feel like you're missing out, right? And so we think that greater connectivity wherever you happen to be, and more technology in the office environment can allow things like, you're sort of virtually in the meeting as an avatar, and you can really feel like you have kind of that full, almost real experience, even if you're home or if you're anywhere in the world, let's say. There's just there's something about that feeling of belonging, right? But it's also very real that some folks do better at home. They can be more efficient, more productive at home, right? They can juggle more parts of their life at home, and so we need to make sure that those employees can really be plugged into the workplace effectively.
You mentioned Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
No, I was just going to say, I saw, to build on Alok's point, I saw a stat that said that it was a 2019 stat that said that the average commute time for the U.S. Worker was 27 minutes one way. So, I mean, that's about an hour of productivity that, was lost. Now, that could have been downtime, right? But at the same time, I do think there's been a tremendous benefit that's been unleashed. Before, mobility was a bit privileged, right? It was reserved for certain job functions, certain levels of the organization. And I think that's been democratized now across the organization. And it's, like I said before, table stakes.
One of the questions we often hear from business leaders is how best to equip their workforces for this future of hybrid or remote working. There's both an investment in shifting mindsets as well as an investment in new technologies. Mark, what do you think businesses should do to best plan for their future technology?
I think first and foremost is the acceptance that we're in a new reality. And as I mentioned a couple of times, I do think that, the competition for talent, because at the end, the lifeblood of an organization is its talent, and is going to be focused on how do you best acquire that talent. And the table stakes are flexibility, some freedom that may not have existed in the past. Most organizations, mine included, have had challenges with turnover, right? You've heard of the Great Resignation, right? That many have chronicled. We're seeing that today, and the idea of bringing in new workers and the most talented is critical to our future success. And part of that is having the right strategy. And so I think it's accepting, and then immediately putting into place a plan that always includes these capabilities, right? Because I do think that's in the past, you could offer certain things to try to attract that talent. But I do think it's table stakes now that you need an infrastructure of tools and systems that are going to make life a lot easier. I mean, it's just getting more complicated. We've seen that over the last 18 months. And in order to address those complications is, a set of tools and infrastructure to be able to do that. And so I do think that those organizations that plan in that way have that strategy as part of their overarching business strategy. And I think they'll be much better positioned. And in addition, working with experts that have experiences in how to enable that, right? We've spent a lot of time working with some of the largest and most complicated organization structures out there. And so we've learned some things along the way, worked with the right partners to be able to position us in a way that can help go through this process.
We have a lot of great questions coming in. So I do want to jump to those in a minute, but I think it's important to look at how sustainability comes into play here. Mark, we know the efficiencies and connectivity enabled by 5G can empower social and possibly in some cases environmental needs. What's Samsung's approach to sustainability, and specifically within the display business? What steps are you taking towards a greener future?
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing a lot for a long time. We probably haven't been as vocal and publicized that as much. But as it relates to just the overarching Samsung, we've had programs around, recycling in display. We have certain programs where we put in, recycling programs where we have the ability to take back product and ensure that it is disposed of and in a green manner. We also focus a lot on our program in education, Solve for Tomorrow, which is a program that is targeted towards the youth and promoting green programs there. Working, we have a very unique situation where we sponsor a contest once a year where different educational institutions have the ability to have their students participate, come up with solutions that are focused on green changes, sustainable solutions, and so forth. So just a couple of things, eco-packaging, a lot of the different things that we're doing, and you'll see more and more of that as we try to publicize more of what's being done in order to ensure that when you're making a decision, you're making the decision based on it's not only returning to your bottom line, but how it's impacting the sustainability of our planet.
I'm going to try and get to maybe two, but we're going to at least try and get one question in from the audience. Thank you to everyone who sent in questions. I have a question here, and apologies if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. Vasil Hlinka, who is wanting to know if Mark or Alok can give any examples of Samsung itself realizing bottom line benefits through your 5G technologies.
Sure, I can take that one. Samsung has actually implemented a 5G network at one of our manufacturing facilities in Korea. And there are a set of use cases, primarily around, like I said, video analytics and for worker safety, for security, and then also efficiency of material flow through the facility. So we have these autonomous ground vehicles, AGVs, that are carrying parts basically from one place to another. And we found that the Wi-Fi network was having a hard time keeping up with some of those control mechanisms. And so the 5G network has been quite beneficial so far from that area. Again, something we haven't talked too much about, but we have actually taken some of those learnings and applied them to a showcase facility that we have in Austin, Texas, at one of our semiconductor manufacturing buildings. And it's a partnership between Samsung, AT&T, and then Samsung's Austin semiconductor facility, where we're showcasing a number of different potential advancements around AR for training, around video analytics, around health and safety of workers, that we think will really transform manufacturing. Samsung happens to be one of the biggest manufacturers in the world. And so it's a great testing ground for us on these new technologies.
You mentioned there, Alok, the benefits of 5G over Wi-Fi. We have a question in from William Bernstein, who is asking, why is 5G a superior solution to a Wi-Fi setup in a retail location? How does 5G UW work in these environments, given its limitations?
Yeah, great question. What we found is Wi-Fi is obviously a tremendous technology, right? And it's ubiquitous and it's quite powerful. Our view is generally that it's not an either or, that 5G enables an enterprise customer to do some things that Wi-Fi is just not great at. But that doesn't mean that Wi-Fi is going to disappear, right? There are concerns, perhaps, or challenges around security and coverage range, primarily when it comes to Wi-Fi. Those are two of the big ones that we hear over and over. So if you've got a retailer, for example, that is doing this buy online, pick up in store, say, where there's curbside pickup and the Wi-Fi network perhaps doesn't work very well once you leave the building, but you need to have on your your Samsung tablet, you need to know kind of what the car type is that you're delivering to, and make sure you have all the right information there. And so that connectivity extending beyond the walls of the building is really important. We've also found that there are times when Wi-Fi is just a little bit overloaded, right? Because Wi-Fi is also being used by your customers. And so there are things you can do with segmentation, but it starts to get a little bit tricky. And having a network, a cellular network that can handle things like augmented reality for trying on clothes, that's not tying up your Wi-Fi capacity. Those are benefits that we're seeing from our retail customers.
We're nearly at the end, so this is going to be a quick fire question. One from Charles Reese coming in, which is, how dependent is the bandwidth improvement on increased cell tower density? Alok, I think that's probably another one for you.
Yeah. So it depends is always the answer, right? So there are we didn't have time to get into it. 5G has a lot of different elements to it, right? There's high frequencies and mid frequencies and low frequencies, and there are deltas in coverage and capacity, but there are sweet spots too, right? So depending on what you're trying to achieve, this mid-band actually that we've been talking about a lot here in the US right now and around the world is we think kind of a sweet spot for achieving meaningfully better throughput and performance while still getting reasonable coverage envelopes. And then there are places where perhaps you would go up to high band to get kind of a narrow slice of real bursty throughput for high density areas, but a mix of different technologies and frequencies is critical.
There's still so much to talk about, but I'm afraid we're about to run out of time. Mark and Alok and everybody here, thank you so much for being part of this discussion. It's been great to talk about how technology will lend some optimism and certainty to pressing issues of the day, such as climate change, remote work, and even global trade. I hope you all enjoy the rest of today's programming. Back to you, Willem and Philippa.
Thank you, Aisha. So this closes out our program on the spotlight stage. The program on the main stage starts soon.
So spend some time exploring the platform, networking, and you can also enjoy, of course, one of the experiences in the lobby where you can visit our interactive gallery of iconic NFTs or break out your VR headset to venture into the field for immersive storytelling and some networking.
We look forward to seeing you soon and continuing conversations like these, which are driving the business of technology.
Thank you.